Shashank, what the heck, man? What happened to my Fable? I subscribed to Anthropics. We literally had God in a box. I didn't subscribe on day one, unfortunately. I waited till I think day three, and I had it
Uh,
for a couple of hours. And now
oh my God.
it's taken away from us, leaving the US uh and Anthropic in my mind as a bit of a pariah. Like I feel like we have now just kind of handed China AI supremacy on an absolute silver platter. It is insane, man. Now the world has seen that Fable and I guess Mythos is actually good, right? Like I think that some of the hype was justified. But now, like the US is treating this as like a nuclear bomb. And then later, China goes and says, like, oh, no problem. Um, we've also got like some great open source models. So then, a couple of days after Fable gets banned, they come out with GLM 5.2, which is like probably slightly worse than Fable, but like you can actually use it. And it's amazing. And I actually think that it's better than all the US models. I'm saying it here, the China is now beating the US in terms of AI that you can actually use. Like, sure, like there's like these rich oligarchs somewhere in their high towers using Mythos, and they're the investors in Anthropic, but like no one can use that. Like, sure, like maybe the US government can use it like as the nuclear bomb, but like for 99.999% of the world, they can't use it. Therefore, like the actual viable choice is China. No one, like I don't know who's going to be trusting like the US anymore in terms of these AI models, because it's like, you might have it and then they'll just rip it away. I didn't get any refunds from Anthropic. I would like to get my $20 refunded, but no. Like I got access to Opus, but like I may rather use uh GB like the GLM 5.2. This is ridiculous, and I feel like the US is making just a blunder. And to me, this looks like retaliation for the way Anthropic has treated the government. So it seems like in the US, like unless you go and try to, like do whatever the government wants, you are going to have the risk of your company being kneecapped, and they're going to take this away from you. Um, it's a real bummer. It's a real bummer. Like, bring back my Fable. I don't know, man. Shashank,
Yeah,
what's your take on this?
what wild soap opera happening at the international stage. Yeah, and I think part of it is the US just a little bit annoyed at Anthropic at not allowing them full access over their military applications. So I think this was a couple weeks back where Anthropic said, no, we're not going to let you customize the model however you see fit, remove all the safeguards, and do whatever you want for military applications. And so the US labeled Anthropic as a supply chain national security risk. And that just, I feel like, snowballed into this issue that we're seeing now, where they banned Anthropic from releasing their most powerful model to anyone who's not a citizen. Like, I can't use it. I'm not allowed to use it. Andre Karpathy, one of the best AI minds in the world who's working at Anthropic, can't use it. He's been working at like AI companies in the US for the last decade, and he can't use it. Non-citizens working probably even within I don't know if they're not a citizen of the US, but working at the frontier of AI labs in the US, they can't use it. And I feel like they are finally considering that AI can be as powerful as nuclear weapons, which, I agree with, but I feel like they are not realizing that the Nuclear Arms Proliferation Treaty prevented other countries from getting access to the same technology, and it was really hard to develop it on their own. But with I don't think preventing other countries from using it is going to stop them from developing AI. In fact, like as you pointed out, GLM landed shortly after with one of the best coding models in the world. So they topped the front end web dev arena benchmarks, becoming number one after Fable dropped out. And they're still like number two in general coding right after OpenAI's GPT 5.5. So like it's open source, open weights. You can download it on your laptop and run it. People had it running on like two Mac studios at home. That's not something you can do with like a Mythos level model. Even if you had access to it, there's no way you can like run it on consumer grade hardware. So this is just insane. This is pushing China to build faster and do things that is just unheard of in this AI space. The frontier is now being uh, competed with open source models, and they're free, they're cheap. Well, I mean, they do cost some money to run, which we can get into. Um, Speaking of, how much do these models cost? Because like Fable, I didn't get a lot of use out of it. I could ask maybe half the amount of questions that I could, and I think that's appropriate because they were offering it at 2x the amount of usage tokens as Opus. But even that, I feel like they were making a loss because they claim that it was just going to be available to users until June 22nd for a couple weeks as a trial to see how people use it. And then they were going to charge people API pricing because, like, this is a massive model and the order of magnitude bigger than Opus, and it would not be financially feasible for them to offer it on their subscription plan unless they started a whole new subscription plan.
I mean, they might start a whole new subscription plan.
They
So
could.
I've actually subscribed to Z.AI, and I got their mid-tier plan. So they have plans that are similar to OpenAI and Anthropic. So they have their like lowest plan, which I think is like $16, the mid-tier plan, which is like I don't know, 65, and then their top end plan is like 165 or something like that. So that contrasts with like Anthropic and OpenAI, where their base plan is $20, then their mid-tier plan is $100, and their top tier plan is $200. So ZAI is like about 20% less. And it is $1 per million input tokens and $4 per million output tokens, with around 20 cents per million tokens cached. All right, a lot of numbers is throughout. What does that mean? It means that it's cheaper than like Anthropics and ChatGPT on paper. However, in practice, it's not actually that much cheaper yet unless you are able to run it. And um, it's true that like you might be able to run some sort of super quantized version on like a high-end MacBook Pro or like multiple MacBooks chained together. Based on my research, if you want to run the entire thing like unquantized, it might cost you a couple $100,000 because you would need to have like multiple NVIDIA H100 or H200 GPUs, and it'd be very, very expensive. However, if you wanted to a dumbed down version, it would maybe be possible on like maybe $10,000 worth of hardware. So, like realistically, I don't think anybody's running this on their laptop yet. But remember, this is the worst it will ever be. So, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of months, maybe a year, we'll be able to get this equivalent running your laptop. Like maybe like Gemma 7 or something will be around this equivalency. But unfortunately, GLM 5.2 is actually maybe slightly more expensive than the current state of the art Anthropic and or ChatGPT models. And the reason is because I think that they're having some a little bit of growing pains, I guess you could say, right? So I so the problem is Anthropic and OpenAI, they don't tell you how many tokens you use, but on Z.AI, they will tell you how many
Oh,
tokens.
at least on their subscriptions, because the subscription is kind of like amortized over the over all the users, and they kind of balance the usage depending on how their entire customer base is using their servers. Whereas, I mean, you can use their API directly, and they price you per call, which you have fine grained control over.
Right. That is true. So I'm talking about their coding plan. So I would think that most people who are listening to this, like if you're going to subscribe to it, you're going to be on like their $20 plan, their $100 plan, maybe their $200 plan. And with that, like you don't actually know how much usage you have. They just have different weekly limits, right? So you're going to go on, and then they'll say like, okay, you can have like X amount per week. Now I was on their mid tier plan for ZAI, their pro plan. So Shashank sharing the screen, it's like $64.08. I assume this is it's kind of a weird price, but I assume it's like a nice price in like RMB or something. Um,
Yeah, maybe.
and I used 202 million tokens on GLM 5.2. And that used up 76% of my weekly quota. So, rough math. I think that like you'd get around 300-ish million tokens per week on GLM 5.2 on their middle plan. And that I think is significantly less than what you would get on the equivalent ChatGPT model. So, like, I was able to run through about these 200 million tokens. This took me about 2 days. Now, granted, it was like really heavy use in that 2 days, but I was also using very heavy usage for on Codex and OpenAI, like far more tokens. I think I don't know, they don't tell me the exact number, but like based off of my vibes, I was using ChatGPT way more. And so, I mean, I might have used over a billion tokens, and I rarely was hitting limits on the $100 plan for ChatGPT. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is, um, I think my understanding is that under ZAI, they don't charge you for, or they charge the same amount for cached tokens, meaning like if you are using like the same code base, right? Like when you have that code base, the code is maybe 90% the same in between runs. So um, once you read it once, that's like an initial load, that's an input token. But then, like, if you are working on the same code base and then the exact same tokens or the exact same code is going back into the model, that will be cached. So then they are charging you not for the regular input price, but they're charging for the reduced cached price. So if you are reusing the exact same data, it's a lot cheaper going forward, if that makes sense. So, um, my understanding is like they don't break down from ZAI the cached versus non-cached. So, um, like I think, and this is what I found online, is like you could have like 200 million new input tokens versus like 200 million cached input tokens, and they're going to charge you like the same amount of usage. So contrast that with DeepSeek. DeepSeek, I put in $10 onto their API, and this was just like pay as you go. And I used over 500 million tokens, with the majority of them being cash tokens. And I've only spent about, I think, $7 or $8 on my DeepSeek plan. So, you know, GLM 5.2, amazing model. I think it's honestly like on feature parity, maybe even a little bit better than the top of the line US models. But in practice, I think that like if you're actually a software developer, like Codex and or Anthropic is still the better deal for now. I think that'll probably change. But if you're looking for like the absolute smartest, um, you know, like realistically, you'd probably want to subscribe to a couple of these things, or I might just still recommend Codex just because like the usage limits are better. But like GLM is like super, super smart. And I think we can finally say that China has fully caught up.
Yeah. So I just want to comment on the pricing because you mentioned it. So DeepSeek starts at like 5 cents per million tokens, and for each linear increase in intelligence, we need like an order of magnitude increase in price. And so GLM is like maybe roughly 50 cents. It's 42, but it's on the order of magnitude of some of these frontier models like GPT 5.4 or 5.5, similar order. And then you go like a whole order of magnitude in the single digit dollars per million tokens. So Fable 5 is like $3.25. That's like close to 10 times as expensive as GLM to get like a linear increase in performance. So this is just one measure of intelligence, but I'm using the artificial analysis intelligence index. And so we go from DeepSeek's 44 to GLM's 51 to Fable 5's 60. So it's like you need an order of magnitude more compute, more inference, spend more data to train these models. But I think so. My takeaway here was that GLM is a coding specific model, and this is not the first one that we've seen where they're focused on a specific use case. Even Cursor built their Composer 2.5 a few weeks ago, and that's entirely a coding specific model. I think they um, forked one of the Chinese models. They were open about this, and then fine tuned it, and then honed in on coding because their entire company is focused on coding, and we're seeing a better payoff for fine-tuning models for a specific use case because it's cheaper. You don't have the entire world's knowledge encoded in the model's weights, and so you don't have to load all of that in memory. You don't need to do matrix multiplication over it when you're doing inference, and so it's just overall cheaper. So I think that's how they were able to get like close to OpenAI, Anthropic's level of performance with an open source model. They just honed in on coding. Um, and I think this is what we're going to see going forward because the spend for the consumer spending, the enterprise spending on AI coding, even for me, even for you, we're spending a lot of money on tokens, and it's getting to a point where optimizing the kind of model that you're picking becomes extremely important. On the other side, like the entire world is spending more money than we've ever seen in the history of mankind on infrastructure build out. We're seeing bottlenecks in deploying data centers because there's just not enough energy. So I feel like the entire world is seeing bottlenecks, and this here is, I think, one way that humanity is going to get around it.
Yeah, and I think that right now this is the most expensive it will ever be for this level of intelligence, and I would not be surprised if GLM 5.2 level intelligence or GPT 5.5 intelligence maybe in like a year comes down like 10x or something. I think that could be what we see if we follow the current trends. But before we go to the next topic, I want to talk a little bit more about the pricing and why it's incredibly difficult to compare token usages. So, like, the way I kind of think about it is imagine you had a lawyer, and a lawyer was a type of person who charged per word. And one lawyer liked to talk a lot, but was very dumb. And then another lawyer was like very intelligent, but only said exactly what needed to be said. And I think that, like, oftentimes a lot of these cheaper models, kind of like the dumb lawyer, where th- like their tokens are cheap, but a lot of their tokens aren't very valuable. And oftentimes, like, you might be willing to pay more per token, but like have each token be worth more. So, for example, I saw some posts online where people were talking about Fable, and they said like, "Hey, yeah, Fable was very expensive, but I was able to one shot a very complex piece of software, and it only used like 500,000 tokens, right? So it's like I asked it once, it churned and thought about it for 10 minutes, and it was very token efficient, and it was able to make a highly complex piece of software without using that many tokens in relation to the total amount of tokens. So like, yeah, sure, like a million output tokens for Fable was like $50, but it only used 500,000 and it got it right the first time. Whereas, like, if you're going to use something like, let's say, DeepSeek, or let's say GPT 5.5, it might take you 100 million tokens of reasoning and follow ups and more time. And it actually could end up costing more on the inferior model just because it's going to take you more time and it's going to have more kind of time thinking and reasoning, and you have to error correct, and you're not going to get it in one shot, and it's going to take like more of your time. It's going to take more tokens, and ultimately, like, yeah, just because like your token was like cheaper per token, like each token was like less valuable. So I feel like there needs to be some sort of new metric where you measure like intelligence per like token or something like that. Because like what we have right now, I feel like is really inferior because like all tokens are not created equal. And I don't exactly know like how that should be standardized, but this should be like, you know, intelligent units where it's like, oh, this is like, worth like this token is worth 10 and this token's only worth like 2. So I don't
I
exactly.
I have I have just the chart for you. So I think the ARC AGI leaderboard is a great example of demystifying this. Instead of comparing price instead of comparing different models in terms of price per token, I think it's more meaningful now as we're getting into reasoning models. And you said like they might reason completely differently. They might have different tokenizers. So like OpenAI might just tokenize a sentence differently than Claude, and the context window might balloon as you're reasoning over a complex thing, and they might compress the context differently depending on the different models. So I think all of this affects the final spend for like a given task, especially as it becomes more and more complex. And this ArcAGI 2 leaderboard, because like I just picked this because this is a fairly saturated leaderboard where we can see the price at various levels of completion. Uh, the ArcAGI 3 is still new, and we haven't even hit 2% in the in completion. So let's take a look at the ArcAGI 2 leaderboard. We can
Oh,
see
so
this.
by the way, just to define it real quick, ArcAGI is a benchmark that solves kind of like IQ level tasks. So we talk about it a lot on this podcast, but for the new listeners, that's what we're talking about here. ArcAGI is kind of like the idea is it's a benchmark where they try to find tasks that are easy for humans, but hard for AI. So think like kind of like IQ level tasks, like color this or like rearrange these types of things. Anyways, go ahead, Shashank.
Yeah, so one straightforward comparison is just looking at OpenAI's performance between two version bumps. So their GPT 5.4 scores roughly like 83% at $16 per task. And you bump up a version, the next model scores a little bit better, 85 at $1.87 per task. So I'm showing a chart that is a log chart, and we can see that this jumped a whole order of magnitude. It's an order of magnitude cheaper and like, marginally a little bit smarter too. But I think that's kind of what's happening. It's becoming more token efficient. That just means maybe it's becoming more intelligent per token. So you it's like you're not compare each token is not made the same. And each token from a different model provider is also different. We're looking at one specific benchmark, and each benchmark that we look at is also very different depending on which model that you use. Their token efficiency might be different for coding. So I feel like ranking models per task is going to be the new way going forward compared to just cost per token.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I was actually looking at open routers to see what the pricing was for GPT 5.4 versus GPT 5.5. And GPT 5.4 was $2.50 per million input and $15 per million output, whereas GPT 5.5 was $5 per million input and $30 per million output. So on paper, you would think that GPT 5.5 is the more expensive model because the input and output prices are double. But in practice, GPT 5.5 is actually 1/10 the price of using GPT 5.4 for this particular use case. So it's like you can't just
It
look at the tokens.
It's completely bonkers math. And I think it also there's another factor here that I don't think any of the companies have solved. It's model routing. Because like I don't think you would need the frontier model for every single use case. I think we had a presenter from a startup, Martian Router, I think.
Martian
They
AI, I
presented
think.
this Martian AI. I don't know if they're still around, but they presented a router which would pick the model based on the complexity and domain of the task. So that way you wouldn't have to like choose which model you need for which task and figure out, okay, is this feature that I'm developing, does that warrant the frontier model, or can I just whip it out with a generic open source model? And that also matters a lot because I think if it doesn't cost that many, if it doesn't take that many tokens, you don't need to use the frontier model. You could just use a lower tiered model and save some money. So I think we're missing that additional routing layer. And I heard a podcast from was it Mike Krieger, the CTO of Instagram, who joined Anthropic? He's leading their labs effort, and he's talking about how he's been blown away by uh, Claude Fable 5's intelligence, but like you don't always need that intelligence, and it would be fine to use a lower model, even a sonnet or a haiku for some things. But you know, figuring out what model to use when is cognitive load on us. That would save some money, but then i- it's something that we aren't optimized for. So that's another piece that I think missing.
Yeah, I remember OpenAI was trying to do that with GPT-5, I think, where they were trying to do some of that routing. But I feel like the problem is I personally don't know exactly when I should use like the simpler model. So in general, I always will just use the best model from the provider every single time, just because like you don't know. It's like I don't want to like make subtle errors, and if like I'm just paying a subscription, I'm gonna use like the best one always. The only time where I'll like purposely go down to the cheaper models is like when I'm not doing programming, but I've been studying a lot of Japanese lately, and I have it help me with my like Japanese sentence structure and whatnot because I am living in Japan now, and I will use it to help me with grammar because like you can use like really cheap models and they're pretty good at teaching you basic Japanese grammar. So that I've been using like the DeepSeek Flash, and it's been fantastic. It's so good for helping me learn like the basics of grammar and asking questions, and it's basically free. I mean, I don't know, it's like 2 cents per million tokens or something like that. It's so cheap.
I I
Yeah.
do the exact same thing when trying to learn Spanish because I'm here in Mexico and I use the Gemini 3.5 Flash model. It's included in my subscription. It's again free because it's all amortized over all the subscribers for Gemini, which are a lot, and it's fine for language translation tasks because I think also if you guys don't know, transformers were originally built by Google to solve the issue of language translation because it understood the entire context of a sentence without like word by word translation. So great for language. Dumb model is perfectly fine. But yeah, I think as you mentioned, if I'm coding, especially for a project that I care about, I just play it safe and use the bestest model that I can. But one strategy that I do take occasionally is I do the planning with a frontier model and the step-by-step implementation with a cheaper model, which seems to be working fine. I haven't had any glaring issues that I can notice, but I feel like the thinking and the planning is the hardest part of software development, and the actual implementation, once you know what you're building, isn't that hard.
I mean, maybe. I think that the implementation is also hard, and oftentimes I'll use like the best model to implement it as well. But one thing that I also will sometimes do, if we're just talking about like how we go and program, is I will do the planning with the top of the line model, implementing with either the top of the line or like maybe one below. So I think by default on Codex, they have like extra high for planning and then high for implementation. And then what I'll do is I'll like make a new session and I'll say like, hey, I'll either take a different model or like the same model, and I'll say like, "Hey, review what was done." And then they'll oftentimes find a bunch of things, and I'll say, "Okay, fix that," and then I'll just like start a new session, have it review what was done, and then keep looping until like it doesn't find anything meaningful. And then like, okay, good enough. Then I say, "Okay, now run the code, run some tests, and like smoke test it and make sure it still works." So that has been working, but it's slow and not that token efficient. So I don't know. Um,
What one interesting thing that you just mentioned, looping. This has been a new concept that's been circling AI Twitter, at least. A lot of people are moving away from prompting, or even like building agents to creating loops where you're like prompting an agent is still too slow. You want to be able to have the agent prompt itself once you design a robust enough loop where it can feed in on itself, learn from its outputs, and just get better. Some examples are just QA loops, for example. Have an agent keep testing a bunch of things, finding bugs, fixing it, adding more tests, finding bugs, fixing it. An ideal product loop would be getting feedback from users, figuring out what's wrong, creating tickets, fixing those tickets, and then continuing. And that's like a fortuitous product loop that makes your product better. And so there are all kinds of loops that you can design with your agents depending on your use case, where you're kind of like removing yourself as the bottleneck out of this equation. And so you don't need to manually prompt every single time. Um, but like, the flip side is their token burn rate just like goes off the charts. And so you got to do this in a domain which is cost effective. But once you do that, I think your productivity will just like skyrocket. So I'm curious. I wanted to hear what kind of loops do you have going with NovaCut so far?
Oh yeah. So th- pretty much there's a couple loops. So the one loop is what I just described is where when I'm developing, I will um write the code, like plan, write, and then I'll have like the AI review it, and then I'll rewrite it. And I actually did write a code that would loop automatically for me, but I have that turned off for now. And the problem is um I found that it's really hard to um, know when to abort the loop. Meaning, like, uh, if you ask the AI in a new context to review the code, it'll always find something. And oftentimes, like that thing is like semi-minor. So then, like, it'll fix that thing, and then it'll look again and like, oh, I found this other thing from like some other edge case, and then it's like it'll keep going. And like I think it's like
You got to have
I
a threshold. You got to say that if it's below this level of P0, like a critical, regular linting, anything below linting, just ignore it. You got to have a threshold, I think.
Yeah, but then like it'll always seem to find something. So, and that's I think something that like maybe I need to work on better is to say like, hey, this is like the threshold because like the model is going to determine its own threshold. So it's like it might say, oh, this is a hypercritical if like the if the moon is full and the werewolves are out, they will come. So I don't know. It's like one of those things where you don't know, but that's one loop, and then the other loop that I've been experimenting with is ads. So this is like kind of a manual loop, but I've been running ads to promote NovaCut. For those who don't know, NovaCut is the AI video editor that I am working on. So it can take all of your footage and help you edit your footage for you. So think of it as almost like a way that you can go and automate your own video editing. So, you're not going to be micromanaging all these little things, but almost think of it as like handing off to an editor where you give your footage to NovaCut, you describe in high level detail what you want, and NovaCut will spit out a an edited video that like you could either use and download directly, or you could go and export it to a um, one of your editors. Like you can export it to Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, whatever it'll work. And you could finish from there, or like you continue prompting in NovaCut. It's kind of like vibe coding, but for video. So that's the thing I'm working on. And if you want to try it, NovaCut.ai. It's very cool. But what I am trying to work on is ads for NovaCut. So what I'll do is I use like the Google Ads MCP server, and I will go and have the agent look at my ads, see what's working, and then refine the copy. So there's like a few things like that. Also, one other thing that I was doing for looping is I made a bunch of comparison pages, so like NovaCut versus competitor. And I wanted to make sure that the comparison pages were like actually valuable. It wasn't just like, me saying like, oh, NovaCut's amazing. I mean, like it's a pretty cool tool, but like legitimately, I think other tools are better for certain use cases because they're optimized for those things, right? So for example, if your goal is to make like 50 clips from a podcast, NovaCut isn't the right tool yet, right? So, like for that, you might want to use a tool like Opus Clips because they are designed for taking long form video and then making like a bunch of short form podcasts from it, like short term clips that you could use for YouTube, and then it'll automatically post for you. Like NovaCut can make short form clips, but right now it's optimized for combining clips and making like a long form video. So like the short form clips is coming, but it's not there yet. So like right now, it's like NovaCut isn't the right tool for that. So like I have some comparison pages that go into those details. So I'm hoping to like actually help people figure out like when NovaCut is the right tool for them. But yeah, that's like another loop is I was going through. I had I wrote the comparison page and then I had like the AI go in and then like fact check everything like line by line by line to make sure that like what I was saying was actually accurate. So are the comparison pages completely accurate? Probably. I mean, they're mostly accurate, but I had the AI help me double check to make sure that like what I was saying and what was written was actually correct. And I had that run like 50 times. So like I feel like fairly certain that like these comparison pages are correct, but you never know. But that's like the other types of loops. So I think that like um, you know, write code, fix code, write code, or like write things, the fact check, run, review, analyze are all like loops that you can do. But anyways, enough of loops. Going back to the Fable thing, which was we started at. Shashank, what do you think it's gonna take for Anthropic to re-release Fable?
Um, so I guess they had to remove access to everyone because the US forced them to only provide access to US citizens, not even foreigners who are working at Anthropic. So realistically, they had no way of doing that when they were ordered to comply, and so they just had to disable access to everyone. Now, I know you added this in the show notes. They have added an identity verification scheme, which I think taking a step back though, they're still trying to protest this decision from the U.S. because the U.S. mentioned that they're concerned about a vulnerability in this model that it is susceptible to being uh, to do cybersecurity um, uh, attacks, but they mention that this is no different than any of the other models that are out there already. So why are we getting targeted over this specifically? So they're still trying to fight this in court. But at the meantime, I think they're trying to hedge their bets and add an identity verification layer where if they don't have any other alternative, they will require US citizens to verify in order to get access to this. So it's kind of sad, but I get it. It's We're on the way to AGI. We're on the way to the singularity. This is really high stakes. We have abundant intelligence at our fingertips, and I don't like it, but I get the US's stance when it comes to gatekeeping this level of intelligence. But I feel like this is the same thing that's happening with the entire chips industry, where they restricted access to NVIDIA's top of the line chips, and now Chinese semiconductor and manufacturing is catching up. They're able to build their own chips. They have their own supply chain. It's not as good, but it's catching up. And the same thing is happening with the model space too. It's not as good, but it's catching up. And I think that'll be like kind of a sad side effect. The US will end up um, bolstering the Chinese ecosystem because they took away access, and also the Chinese users are going to get way more customers. All the non-US users are going to have to go to China to get the frontier models now, and that's going to end up uh, adding more money into the Z.AI, the DeepSeek banks, and they're going to be able to fund better research and better models. So In some ways, I feel like the US just handed over the keys to China.
Yeah, it really feels that way. And it bums me out that it feels like the way things are going, you might see the Great Firewall of America, where you might just have people go and oh, Shashank. Oh, okay. Uh, I just saw you
I
started
raised my
sharing your
hand
screen.
accidentally. That was a mistake. Yeah, I was trying to share my screen to show their identity verification from Anthropic.
Oh, okay, gotcha. But anyways, it feels like we're kind of heading towards like the Great Firewall of America, where they're gonna maybe start blocking other uh models, and like I wouldn't be surprised if America started blocking DeepSeek and Minimax and all of these models and kind of forced you to use with KYC, like the Know Your Customer laws, and in order to use these models. And it'll be kind of like banking, where it's very laborious to go and set up a bank account, and it's highly regulated, and you need to show your ID and tell people what you're going to do, and it's just really challenging to send your own money. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of uh, the $10,000 limit that you need to move currency across borders, right? So it's like, you know how when you go to the airport, there's all these signs saying like, oh, if you're traveling with more than 10,000 US dollars worth of goods, you need to declare that, to say like, you know, this is what you're traveling, because they want to make sure that people aren't smuggling amounts over. Now, my understanding is that limit, the $10,000 limit, was made, I think it was like the 1970s. And at the time, you know, $10,000 in the 1970s was worth like, I don't know, $100,000 today. Now, most people today wouldn't be carrying $10,000, but now you have all sorts of things now, which like, you might be legitimately carrying over $10,000. So like, for example, um, I bought some gold a little while ago, and at the time, like the gold was worth uh like half of the price it was worth now. So like I could have easily bought like, you know, let's say $2,000 worth of gold, right? And then like if I bought it early enough, it'd be worth $10,000 now. So it's like same gold, same thing. Before it didn't hit the limit, now it does. Like, am I more of a criminal? No, it's just like uh the money became weaker, or like the gold became stronger. It's not like I became some sort of drug lord. It's just that you know, the limits weren't indexed to inflation. If they were actually making it so that the airport limits were um like valid, uh they would make it so that like every year it would go up. It's like, oh, well, now you have to declare anything over $200,000, then I think people would agree with that. But like the $10,000 was fixed in time, and I feel like, you know, once they fixed that number and they didn't index to inflation, um, in the future, everybody is going to declare everything, because, you know, maybe let's say 50 years from now, $10,000 will be like, you know, what you pay to like go out to lunch or something like that, because inflation is so high. And then everybody will say like, will have to, you know, give all your money, or not all your money, but like all your information to the government, saying like, you know, if you're like, all transactions will be logged, and that's a sad day. And I think that if things continue, we're going to see that with AI. Like the government will say like, "Oh, well, this is just for Mythos, uh, because this is like the highest end model. We don't want people having access to this technology." But then soon, like when all models are Mythos level, like the government might watch every single one of your uh, communications with these models, and then they're just going to have like mass surveillance on you, because they'll say like, well, think of the children, we can't have anybody have access to this level of intelligence. And now there'll be just like a massive panopticon where the government will see every single thing that you're doing, and they'll have better AI than you, so they'll be able to analyze this all at scale. And like if you start searching for the things they deem like wrong think, they might come to you and try to take you down. So I don't know. I think it's like a very dangerous path that we're towing. And like right now, I actually kind of trust the Chinese model makers more, to be honest, because they're uh, having open weights for their models. Like you could go run this locally. Like you can have sovereignty over your own thoughts. Like in my mind, I think that like what you say to the AI should be like under the First Amendment. It should be protected speech, right? Like I'm going and talking to the AI as my confidant many times, right? And like if I'm talking to like people in private, like this should be my own personal data. It should be treated almost like medical data, and I don't want like the government looking at that. And like if I can run a model locally and then talk to the AI and have it be my confidant, like I'm going to prefer to do that over having Big Brother look at every single request that I make. And I think this is like really really dangerous. And I think that um people in the US, they might have no choice but to use like Anthropic or OpenAI or maybe Gemini, right? Because like those companies are maybe going to be working with the government. But like if you're the rest of the 95% of the people living outside the United States, you're going to be like, hey, why do I want to give the United States government like all of my information? I am going to use like a Chinese model or maybe like a European model. Maybe I'll use Mistral or something where I don't have to, give them all of my information. I think like for the same reason why the U.S. wanted to ban TikTok because they were worried about China taking the information. Like people are going to say like, hey, why do I want to use the U.S. model? Like, all these other models are like just as good, and I don't have to, give you my entire chat history. So it's really dangerous, and I mean, this could crash the stock market because if these models fall out of favor for U.S. companies, where's the money going to come from? Like, if you're just limited to U.S. buyers, I mean, like the U.S. is a big economy, and there's definitely a lot of money there. But like, if you cut out 95% of the world who don't want to use your models and they want to use like the sovereign models where you can, you know, uh, not be watched, I think people are going to do that. And yeah, it worries me. It really does. Because it really just feels like the wrong direction things are going.
Yeah, I think this is a pivotal moment that's happening, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out. But I do want to like think through how they're even going to enforce this, because yes, they can add some identity layer, but like they're going to have to do this through all of their resellers too. Like whoever is providing Anthropic models, like Google, AWS, like I mean GCP from Google, Azure for Microsoft, any cloud provider that is providing Anthropic models is going to have to check if they're a customer. What if you for NovaCut add Fable into your model, and then a Chinese user signs up to your service? Are you going to have to do the KYC for your product too? Like, how is this going to proliferate to all of the end users? Because what we've even seen this gray market for cloud subscription resellers that has come out, because Chinese can't use the US models because there's an export ban. And so a lot of people have been reselling Claude models through proxies, because the subscription even costs less than the API. So you save money, you get access to models that are not available in China, and you get like the frontier, the US intelligence. But now with these kinds of bans, like it's just I feel like it's going to be really hard to enforce. Which also it's very similar to the export bans from that are happening at the forefront of the semiconductor space. Nvidia is not allowed to sell its best H100s. It can sell some of the older chips. The same thing, I was reading. It's crazy that even the Korean companies can't sell their best RAM to Chinese competitors. The U.S. has implemented an export ban on SK Hynix in South Korea, preventing a South Korean company from selling their best RAM to China. Like it's just mind-boggling the amount of pull the U.S. has. So this kind of reminds me of a funny story that I've been traveling in Mexico, and I met this Russian guy. He works for buyers in Russia who have lots of computing requirements. They need networking equipment, switches. Unfortunately, Russia is also on the list of countries that are in the export ban. So he can't get any US equipment. And the sad thing is, Russia has had a lot of infrastructure that has already been deployed with US equipment. A bunch of Cisco switches, a bunch of networking equipment from Palo Alto Networks, and I'm sure NVIDIA chips. And now all those equipments are sitting useless, hundreds of thousands of dollars useless because they don't have a license to turn those equipment on and make it work. So he's trying to find back channels to try to figure out how to uh, get this equipment, how to get licenses, how to get technical documentation to figure out how this works. And it's funny that this is impacting the entire world. If you're not an ally of the US, you're gonna get left behind. Um, and I just this whole Russia thing was a new revelation for me. I didn't realize the impact that these export bans had, especially on infrastructure that has already been deployed. So the I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think this is a valuable lesson for what's coming in the future. So Cisco, for example, a couple of years ago, I think when the Russia-Ukraine war started, they had subsidiaries in Russia, and they were ordered to leave because the U.S. said, "Okay, there's an export ban; you can't sell anything in Russia." And they wound up shop. They closed down everything, and then they just burned down their entire factory. They had $23.5 million in equipment, and they just burnt it down because they didn't want the Russians to get their hands on it. So, um, crazy times. I think there are sides being taken. I heard the UK tried to apply or plead to get access to the frontier models from the US, but the US was like, "Nope, sorry, allies are not going to get it either. It's just going to be inside the US." So it's really crazy times. I think we're seeing technology progress at such an incredible rate, but I'm sure the downsides are going to be um, pretty challenging too, because we kind of glossed over what Fable 5 is, but Fable 5 is essentially Mythos 5. It's the most powerful model that, in my mind, the best AI company has made. Um, you know, Anthropic, I made a post a little while back. They have an insane talent density. They have the best AI talent flocking to go work at Anthropic. People with CTO level positions taking a demotion, going to work for them. Now they got a Nobel Prize winner, the one of the heads of Google DeepMind, who's won a Nobel Prize for his work on AlphaFold. He left Google after I don't know, like close to a decade there, and he's going to go join Anthropic. So they're getting an insane talent roster, and they're building the best model, Mythos, which they deemed was too scary to release. So they offered it to a private release to a consortium of tech companies so that those tech companies can use this amazing model to fix the security vulnerabilities that it undoubtedly found in their operating systems, in their servers, in their code bases. And they were like, okay, if we release this out into the wild, people are just going to use it to bring down the entire uh, tech ecosystem. So they did a private release and then decided after a little bit of private testing, we can release it to the world, but with some safeguards. So the Fable 5 is just Mythos 5, but it refuses any cybersecurity questions. It refuses any military defense and certain restrictions that they've implemented. So, yeah, crazy times.
I think that's actually a really good point. And I think I was a little bit hyperbolic at the beginning of this podcast to say like the United States has blundered. So let me just try to steelman the US's position real quick. So I think that, you know, Anthropic, they for the last couple of months have been saying like, hey, our model is so powerful that like you should be scared. You should be very, very scared to use it. And they were had this like whole roadshow saying like, hey, we found like thousands of 0-day vulnerabilities. This thing is super dangerous. And then like But don't worry, we're like the safe AI company, and we are going to go and make sure that it's safe, right? So it's like we're gonna spend a bunch of time on pen testers, and we're going to try to jailbreak this model. And then they made Fable, which they claimed was like the safe Mythos that couldn't be jailbroken. However, it took like a day for the general public to actually like jailbreak the model. And the rumor,
Did they actually?
so I there was apparently like a guy named like Pliny or something who was able to jailbreak it. But I think I put this in the show notes, but I guess what people say what happened was Andy Jassy or some like executives from Amazon were talking with the White House, and they raised concerns to say like, hey, we were able to maybe like jailbreak this. And apparently, what the jailbreak was is I don't actually know how you fix this. They said fix this code. So I don't exactly know the code that was um, there, but like imagine let's just imagine for a second. Let's like hypothesize how you might be able to do this. Like you might be able to say, you might be able to have some code that was like maybe like a bug bounty or like maybe some code where I like scaffolded some like a virus or something like that. And then I go to Fable and I say, hey, my code doesn't work. I'm pen testing. Please let me make this work. And then it'll say, oh, well, you're just like debugging code. Let me fix this for you. And then, maybe it would make the bad code work. And like, that's your jailbreak, right? And I don't know like how you really get around that. So that's what the Register reported. They said that Andy Jassy or somebody said like they gave an example of code and they used the three-word prompt, fix this code, and Fable obliged and fixed it. Now, maybe it should have said like, hey, this looks like not very good code. I don't think we should uh, fix this. Like, I won't do that. But apparently it did. And yeah, that is incredibly difficult to go because I think that all models have like there's like ways you can ask to do things and then the model will oblige because like if you just ban everything um you would have issues anyways, so that's the thing, that's what happened, and that's like how they apparently jailbroke Fable to get it to do things that were bad, and then once the government saw that, they banned Fable due to its vulnerabilities. So to give like the benefit of the doubt to the US government, they saw that like one, Anthropic was going and saying like, hey, our model's super powerful. Two, the US government saw that like Anthropic claimed that they had made a safe model, but then after like the government talked to some partners, they saw that like, hey, look, like it seems like there's things that can be said to make this model go and do bad stuff. Therefore, it's not safe. Like whatever guardrails Anthropic said they had clearly aren't sufficient. And therefore, like we need to ban this for people because like we can't have, foreign adversaries doing bad stuff. So I think that's kind of like what the US government thinks. And there's actually a little bit of truth to that as well. So like I think both things are true. Like yes, we handed potential AI dominance to China due to this ban, but like also yes, Fable probably could have been jailbroken and do bad stuff. So I don't know. Like in my mind, the solution isn't necessarily ban Fable, but like maybe ban people from doing bad stuff. So it's like, for example, if I have a pencil, like I could stab you in the eye with the pencil. You don't ban the pencils. You put me in jail for stabbing you in the eye with said pencil. So like you have to, I think, ban the bad acts, but not necessarily. And like you have to like put the people in jail who are doing the bad things, but you don't necessarily ban the tools to put them in jail. So like
I think it's a tricky situation because in this scenario, people compare LLMs to nuclear technology. So it's like the U.S. doesn't have control, can't put someone in China in jail. So I see the predicament. It's a challenging situation, but I feel like we've talked about this enough. I kind of wanted to mention this new model, the Xiaomi NEMO V2.5 Pro Ultra Speed. So that is a freaking mouthful, but the cool
They're
part
good at
about
naming
this is
things.
the cool part about this is it's fast and inference fast without using a dedicated inference provider. So we've talked about some of these inference specific chips. Cerebrus, for one, we just IPO'd and like a blockbuster IPO. Grok, Samanova, which we have interviewed, had on a podcast, and they didn't use any of that. They just used, I think, like off the shelf, 6 GPUs, stacked them together, and got up to 1,000 tokens in inference. So a lot of companies have been focused on inference because, we deploy these models once and the usage is just skyrocketing, especially with the proliferation of agents. And now we have loop engineering, where you just get agents to loop in on each other and just keep burning through tokens without you even being in the loop. So this is able to do that, on regular GPUs, not inference focused. And this is kind of cool because I've been working on this tool to be kind of a podcast producer co-host for us, which can listen to us, fact check us as we're saying things, which is helpful. So we don't need to look at our screens and Google facts that I vaguely remember. And so to have a live co-host, inference speed is really important. And I've been using Cerebrus, but that has its own challenges. They have uptime issues. Even though they've been amazing most of the time, it's like if it's not reliable a couple times, I have backups which add a lot more latency, which is not great. So a model like this is really cool to be able to have latency sensitive tasks um, being deployed on any kind of hardware. So I don't need to rely on Cerebrus Cloud. I can run it. Not sure if I can run this locally because it is open source, but at least on a different inference provider. So yeah, any thoughts on this, Mark?
This, I think, is amazing, and I love that people are approaching these problems in a lot of different ways, right? So I think that there's multiple accesses that you can optimize for. I think there's basically three that or maybe four accesses that I think that like you can optimize for. One is intelligence. I think that's the most obvious, right? Two is price, right? Three is speed, and four is size, right? So I think that like all four of these things can be optimized in different ways, and oftentimes they kind of go hand in hand. Like oftentimes, like if you can make a smaller model, you can make it cheaper and also faster because there's just like less parameters, less things, less
But
data
not as
moving around,
intelligent.
but not as intelligent. But like if we can keep the intelligence fixed, but then make it faster and smaller and cheaper, then big win. I mean, honestly, you'd want to get like all four. Like you want like the most intelligence and like the most speed at like the least amount of price. But it seems like Xiaomi was able to get their ultra speed at um like NEMO 2.5 Pro level. So like NEMO 2.5 Pro is one of the top open source models. Or I shouldn't say open source, open weight models, and it's very good. It's an excellent model. It's like probably around the same level as like DeepSeek Pro. But it's like also cheap, and now it's so fast. So like you can like the loops that we were talking about, like you could run those loops incredibly quickly. So you could like write code, check the code, run the code, recheck it, and do that like multiple times. I think that like um what I expect to see in the future, and we don't really have this yet, but I expect that when models get fast enough, um, I will think that because of the stochastic nature of LLMs, you don't always get the exact same code every time. So let's say hypothetically, I am, writing a document or writing some code, right? Um, like I might have the same prompt, and the same LLM may give me uh, a different response every time. So hypothetically, if it's fast enough and also cheap enough, you could say, I want to write this code, let's say not once, but I could run it twice. And then you could have an LLM act as the judge, and then find the best part of the code and then combine them into like one optimal code. Or it doesn't have to be twice, but why not 5 times or 10 times? Like you could write the same code 1,000 times, have the LLM look at all of them, compare them, and then find the best optimized code that's already reviewed. And if let's say it's not 1,000 tokens per second, but it's 10,000 tokens per second, or I mean, who knows? In the future, we'll get a million or a billion tokens per second. I mean, if we have CPUs and GPUs that can run, thousands or like I don't know, we're doing things in teraflops and petaflops now. Like, why couldn't it be like a billion tokens per second, or a trillion tokens per second? And you could have like these things do what is it called, like speculative execution, where like you go and you try to run it and then you try to see like what the best result is, combine them together and get the best code. This is so exciting, and I love that there are more companies trying to get the speed up because lots of things, speed is the most important, right? Like, if you're going to do a real time translation app, like you can't be slow. Like, you don't want to wait, a minute while you get the translation. Like, you want to have somebody talk, and then in your meta glasses, you want to have the person like have subtitles over their face that you can see exactly what they're saying in any language, and then you can get the response. And then if it's fast enough, you could get some responses almost immediately coming out of your glasses or your phone or whatever. So the speed, I think, is an amazing feature. Uh, so I don't know, big fan. Nice job, Xiaomi, and especially the fact that this is like open source, or not open source, but open weight. Amazing. Like that is something that I wish more US companies would do, because I mean there is the I think what is the fastest model now from OpenAI is the GPT 5.5 like Spark models. And like I mean that model isn't quite as good, and it needs to run on specialized Cerebrus hardware. Which I mean, it works, but the fact that like this can run on like regular consumer hardware is a big step forward. So that might mean in the future we might get like everybody having really, really fast inference. And inference itself is a feature, right? Because it's like who wants to wait? Like I want it now.
Yeah, it seems like they've done a lot of cool things to actually get to this point. Don't have to go into the technical details, but I'll briefly mention it. They used smaller precision FP4 instead of FP 8 or 16, which is floating point 4, to store the actual weights and the numbers that represent everything that they're doing. They guess ahead in chunks, so I guess it's like related to speculative decoding. Uh, they use something called D flash. Normally, the AI writes one token at a time, which is kind of slow, but here they have a little helper that guesses a whole batch of upcoming words at once. So usually about 6 to every 8 guesses are right. So like it gets all of them correct most of the time, and nothing changes. If it's wrong, it skips it and then tries again. So it's faster on average, and then it keeps the engine running. They have something called tile RT. At the speed at which they're operating, like 1,000 tokens per second, the computer wastes like a lot of time constantly stopping, restarting tiny tasks. But they built a setup, I think, going into the kernel, which keeps the engine warm and running instead of restarting. A lot of cool technical improvements. Same thing with the GLM 5.2. If I remember correctly, they had something called let me double check, something called index share, which significantly reduces the cost of processing large context windows. And they, there's a lot of algorithmic improvements that are pushing these models out of necessity because, as we mentioned earlier, export bans, lack of the latest and greatest hardware. So the Chinese like optimize every single thing, and like I think this is just inherent in their economy. Because like if you look at some of these manufacturing facilities, they it's like the lighter, the big lighter that you see, they optimize every single, bent metal piece in that to reduce a fraction of a cent in manufacturing costs so that the end product is like, um, I don't know, like 23 cents instead of, $2 for a big US made lighter. So they're operating at such scale, they just have this mentality of optimize, 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 and I think they're carrying the same ethos into building these LLMs on the algorithmic side, maybe on the research side, um, partly out of necessity too. And as a side effect, yeah, like you said, I think this is going to be amazing for all the applications that are coming out. Recently, Snap introduced their wearable computing glasses. Did you see that? Uh,
I
Evan
heard
Spiegel
about it, but
came
I
out.
haven't looked into it.
It's become such a parody. He came out and he said, he's wearing these thick, chunky glasses. They're even bigger than the Meta Ray-Ban. They're like really thick chonkers, and they have an obvious glare over it because it's a display, so you can see that there's something shimmering. It looks like a polarized frame or something, super freaking chunky, and he was trying to demo it. He said, "This is a new paradigm of computing. It's very, human, it's very wearable." Meanwhile, he looks like an android walking around, and the stock dipped, 10% right after that announcement. It's freaking hilarious. I love that they're trying to push wearable computing, but it was just such a joke of an announcement. The publicity couldn't have gotten gotten worse. But I'm glad they're pushing wearable computing, and models like these, I think, will be helpful, in those kinds of, power constrained, compute constrained, and latency constrained use cases.
I'll say this. I just looked it up while you're here. They don't look that bad. I mean, they're a little bit chunky. They're a little bit big, but Snap, I applaud you for trying new things. Your first version of these things may not be the best, but hey, uh, you have that feedback now. People thought it was a little bit too big, so you can iterate, and on the next time, it could be a little bit smaller. Yeah, they're a bit big. Would I wear them? Maybe not, but if they could just shave off a little bit, I would consider
A
them.
lot, a lot.
You
The
know,
top comment that I found hilarious was, "This would go great with the Ferrari Luce." I just lost my mind.
it's a fashion statement. It's a fashion statement. Um, I think you have to be a special type of person to be able to pull it off. But hey, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look at the Vision Pro. I mean, those are way bigger. And
They're not
you look
selling very much.
well, yeah, but you look like a astronaut, walking around in a Vision Pro. At least these more closely resemble glasses as opposed to like astronauts. But anyways, moving on. Last topic, Shashank, did you see this new Midjourney spa? Where Midjourney, the company that makes all of the like some of
Image
the best
generation
image
models.
generation models, they said like, you know what? We like living for a long time, bring back the health, Viva longevity. Let's make a spa. So Midjourney said, "Hey, uh, you may know us for our image generation, but we have lots of AI compute. Let's try to live longer than last time, and we're gonna make an ultrasound bathtub. I guess is what you could think of it, where they're having all these like
Scanner.
little speakers that will go, and then you go in to this golden spa." And you stand there kind of like Tony Stark and like Iron Man, go down, be lowered down into the water, and like thousands of little like mini speakers are going to go vibrate the water, and within about a minute they're going to be able to do a full body ultrasound scan of your body. And I guess since it's just like vibrating water, um that's pretty cheap to vibrate. And I think like the processing is a little bit expensive, but this is like the first iteration. And what really excites me is not necessarily the spa, but that the potential that this spa gives, because I could see it that they might be able to get the cost down, where you might be able to have full body ultrasounds that you could get like maybe even built into your bathtub. So imagine this, Shashank. Imagine you, after a long, hard day at work, you go to your bathroom and you have your smart tub. You fill it up, maybe put on some nice music, light some candles. You go sit down there in your bathtub and it scans your body, and an AI report comes and say like, "Hey, Shashank, you're looking healthy. Keep up the good work." Or it says like, "Ooh, buddy, I noticed like you are 3 days. There's like some little thing growing on like your liver. You might want to get that checked out." And I just checked it out and it's fine. You're good. So don't worry about it, champ. Keep up the good work with that, with the
Yeah,
future
this
that's
is
coming.
this is kind of cool. So it's a complete came out of left field, very unexpected. They make image generation. You can make pretty anime characters. You can design marketing images for whatever product you're selling on Shopify. But they decided, okay, no, we're gonna you know, y you can vaguely say this is related because it's in the medical imaging space, but they just had, like, a 2-hour, live stream for this announcement, and they said, they have a demo, uh but, like, there's no AI in it, immediately. There's no AI in there at all. They have a goal of adding a lot of AI to process all of these images, but it's gonna be a full body ultrasound CT. And there are a lot of reasons why they picked this. They're a bunch of really smart people, who are working at the bleeding edge of AI with image generation. And so they have a spec, that was transcribed in the Latent Space podcast, which another great podcast. But yeah, like Mark mentioned, it has a bunch of speakers, transducers. So these are the little things that go inside your phone, your iPhone, Android, whatever, at the bottom to make it vibrate and generate sound waves, which is how we can hear music or sound through our tiny, tiny mobile phones. And so they have a partner called Butterfly Networks, I wanna say, which went up like 50%. Their stock shot up, in a single day off of this announcement. Insane. This shows the amount of hype that there is and the amount of confidence we have in some of these companies. So Midjourney, is a tiny team. They're fully self-funded. That's one of the reasons why they can do this. They don't have any investors, shareholders to answer to. They can just do whatever they want, follow their ideas on a whim. And so some specs, close to 9,000 transducers, the little, I think, things that you have in your iPhone to generate sounds, um, which I assume are going to work together to generate around 17 gigabytes per second, around 40 gigabytes of data per body slice. I don't know how many slices that they're gonna be, but 2 petaflops of compute. That is a lot of flops. Um, what is a petaflop? Is that there in, um, a single computing cluster? I think, like, Elon's largest cluster can do something close to that. Is that right?
Uh no, you can do a lot more than that. So a let me think about this for a second. So I think in a petaflop right now is like around
Exaflop, sorry.
10,000. Yeah,
They're
so
on
I
the
think
order of
like a
exaflops.
right. So I think like a petaflop is, I think like if I remember correctly, like the human brain is like I think 10 or 20 petaflops. Rough order of math, right? I think that's right. So like this is like 1/10 or so like the human brain, if we just think of terms like order of magnitude. And I think a petaflop right now is roughly $10,000 worth of compute. I think like if you
All right, so
go and then buy like GPUs and stuff, 10,000. So this is about like a $20,000 rig with like current hardware.
so for context, I see that inference would cost on the order of a few teraflops for a frontier model, and so this is a petaflop, which is an order of like 1,000 times more.
Yes. But this is something that you can get um like a lot of GPUs are like almost like a a flop. So like some of the high end NVIDIA GPUs, some like the AMD GPUs, like we're close to this. I'm like slightly wrong, but I know for a fact that uh like I think it was the Tiny Corp, like the one that like George Hotz was making. I ran into him at a hackathon and he was telling me about this. Um he is
Yeah, and
putting
NVIDIA GPU can do a few petaflops. You're right.
yeah,
A single
so
H100.
let me see. I think he has it on here. Okay, so this one right here, like from tinygrad.org, they are selling this computer, which is 778 um teraflops, so like point 0.7 petaflops, and it is $12,000. So if you want their higher end box, which is 3 petaflops or 3,000 flops, which is Blackwell chips, it is $75,000. So somewhere between 12,000 and $75,000, you can get 2 petaflops. So I mean, it's a lot of money. It's like around the price of a car, but like, hey, that's city money well spent. I mean, like, it's something that like the average person, if they stretched on a payment plan, could maybe buy. Right? Like, I
But
think like,
I
yeah.
I think my takeaway was this is 1,000 times more expensive than inference of a frontier model. So this is going to be like on the order of thousands of dollars in today's spend. And that's gonna be a lot of money to start off with, and they mentioned that, they haven't figured out how they're gonna make, money yet. They're planning on bundling this into some sort of a spa-type experience where people already pay a lot of money, and get this as kind of an added benefit, where the scan will take about 20 minutes, in theory, but they're still bottlenecked by a lot of things: bandwidth, algorithm, digital signal processing, data transfer, and also figuring out like a business model. So they do have a spa opening in Union Square in San Francisco. So if you guys are in around there, check it out and let us know how it is. And they have plans to expand to thousands of locations. They have lofty ambitions. They say that it's going to be significantly cheaper in the future. They're going to be able to bring the price down significantly. They thought about this pretty hard. They compared MRI versus CT scanning and came to the conclusion that the MRI is just a very challenging equipment to work with, and they didn't find rooms for optimization as opposed to the CT scan, taking a bunch of iPhone speakers, thousands and thousands of them, wrapping it around you to generate a high fidelity scan is something that they're uh, settled on and which they're going to try to optimize through multiple generations of versions by the end of this year, custom silicon later next year, which will be exciting to see.
Sorry, is this a CT scan? I thought this was an ultrasound.
Uh,
Because I thought the CT scan used radiation, whereas this is just like vibrating water.
it's a full body ultrasound CT scanner.
Oh, interesting. So it's
Yeah.
both. I guess I'm not smart enough to know the difference. But I think like business model is honestly maybe pretty clear to me. Like there's a company called Prenuvo which does
Mhm.
full body MRIs, and I think it's around like $1,000 to $2,000 for the scan. So
It keeps going down. It used to be 5,000, I think.
oh,
And it
okay.
keeps going down. I think Ezra, a competitor, got acquired by some company, and now they're giving it for 500.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I mean, that's not bad. I mean, like it's a lot, but uh, this could be something that you say like, "Hey, I'm gonna go and then subscribe to this." And if they have, let's say, I don't know, let's say like $50,000 worth of like compute and sensors and stuff like that, right? Like, um, and if you charge like $500 per scan, I mean, what is that? Like 100 scans? Is that right? Am I doing that math right? I think. Yeah, around that. Let's say like 100 scans or so. If you could do like 3 scans an hour, what is that? Like maybe like 30 scans a day. Like, I mean, 900 scans a month, uh, ish. Like after like a month or two, like if they're able to charge that much, uh, they could like break even for their equipment, their rent. I mean, this could be like a pretty decent business model. I mean, I think a lot of people would pay $500 to go to a place and get their body scanned, especially since it's so new. And if they can get the price down, let's say it's not $50,000, but it's $10,000 or $5,000 worth of equipment, um, they could maybe sell these and make money off that. Like you put this in your bathtub, or they could just open up more and more spas and just like make the money through the spas, like a sauna, like cold plunge, and like a full body scan. I mean, why not? This sounds like a great idea.
And to clarify, they use the word CT in the purely technical sense, which is computed tomography, because they surround you with a bunch of ultrasound, I guess, speakers, and each one of those creates uh, an image. So it's like if you've seen the classic ultrasound of a baby, it creates a very grainy, pixelated image, but they combine thousands and thousands of those to create a computed tomography, which has very high resolution. So it doesn't use any radiation as traditional CT scans, which use X-ray, but this just uses the concept of a computed tomography with ultrasound. So no radiation, which is great.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. So it'd be safe, and maybe in the future they could get it where it kind of massages you as you're in there. I could imagine that like a spa, you laying down and like the vibrating water, and then they're like scanning you, but like also giving you like a nice sound experience. It'd be amazing. Uh, Good job,
Yeah, I
Midjourney.
bet
I love you guys thinking outside the box. Let's all
I think
live
the Bay
longer than
Area
last
hippies
time.
would love a full body sound healing experience with 9,000 speakers. It's like the perfect combination of tech and hippie in San Francisco. It's fantastic.
Cool. It's so amazing. Man, I want to go back to San Francisco. I was in San Francisco last week. But unfortunately the Midjourney uh speaker wasn't there yet. But if it was there, I would have gone because that would have been really cool. Um, anyways, I think that's all I had. I don't know. Do you have any other topics?
No, I think that's it. Did you catch the AI engineer conference at all? Did we have any events going on that overlapped?
No, I didn't. I don't know if there's
I believe it's going
anything.
on this week.
Okay, because that's in the Bay Area.
Yes, it is one of the largest, if not the largest, um, conference, multi-day conglomeration of AI engineers in the world. There should be a lot of cool talks coming out of it. I think we'll probably do a coverage of the most interesting bits we find over there. But yeah, if you're there in the Bay Area, definitely check it out.
Yeah, awesome. So
Not
everybody can
sponsored.
check that out. No, not sponsored. But this podcast is sponsored by NovaCut. So if you want to edit your videos, go and use NovaCut AI. Have all your footage edited for you so you could save time and get back to filming. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. And don't forget to subscribe. That is very
Like
important
and
because,
comment.
yes, because there's a lot of you listening, and most of you who are listening are not actually subscribed. So, like, it's free to do. Do it. We put a lot of effort to these, and we don't make any money on these podcasts yet. But like, if you want to support us, please subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you a penny. And if you can leave a review, you can leave up to 5 stars, and I expect nothing less than that. So thank you for if you made it all the way and you're not giving us a 5 star, just leave a comment and tell us why you're not going to give us 5 stars. And do that. So, anyways, that's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.